What's up, Internet? Brandon here with Jimmy.
What's up, guys?
And happy October. We still got a couple days left in the month. So Jimmy and I had an idea, and we might try a couple different versions of this over the year. But in Halloween, or in October specifically, we're going to focus on horror movies. But one of our favorite franchises is the Halloween franchise. And I think the most interesting thing about it is that there are several ways to watch this franchise. Every year I pick one version to watch, and there has been times I've rewatched the entire franchise, but the last couple of years I've tried to rewatch a certain timeline. And I was like, why don't we watch one? Like I said, thought of this late in the month, so we picked the shortest route right now. But why don't we watch and then just kind of break down each timeline and see how we like them, see how they hold up over the years that we watch them.
Well, sadly, I wish we picked the shortest timeline because that would have been Rob Zombie.
I did think about that, but I was like, we have to start this with watching the original. So,
well, that's what I mean is that because of the one we picked and the line we went to, I think we've seen the worst.
Man, you know what? Let's get into it because the one we chose this year was Halloween, Halloween 2, H20, and Halloween Resurrection, which outside of the Rob Zombie, is the shortest timeline of movies to watch. So we just wanted to start there. And yes, Cliff Notes in the beginning, probably my least rewatched timeline going in.
And that's what's sad is because to me, and obviously the first two stand up for several of the timelines. So those to me are two of the best movies in a franchise. Like the original, obviously Halloween, Michael Myers introduction, great. The fact that there was a worthy sequel, in my opinion, was great. Keeps the tension going, brings back most of the characters from the original that survived. The hospital just is like, whoa, that's crazy. The way she's on drugs just ups the ante. The fact that Dr. Loomis is in there, and we have a satisfying ending. So to me, those two, especially when they came out, the second one in the early 80s, really showed how to have a sequel to an amazing original.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. Like, I think no matter how we do this, the first and second Halloween movies are always going to stand up as solid films. And then it's everything from there that kind of gets a little wacky. This specific, and I will say not as much H20 to me as Resurrection, but after watching 1 and 2 and jumping straight to H20, it's crazy how much I love Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, I really do. So any timeline with her, I'm always like, cool, we get more Laurie Strode. She's so good at that role. She knows it so well. But even going into H20, it kind of loses its... Honestly, you know what I think kills it for me is Michael Myers. He seems so much smaller. The mask isn't good. It was such a weird thing to be like 20 years later, and it feels like it wasn't really a thought out movie.
It's so disappointing on rewatch. I think I'm an old man, so my memory is not the greatest, but I think this was the first Michael Myers movie I saw in the theaters. I had the opportunity, meaning I was old enough to see probably 5 and 6, meaning I could obviously sneak in if I wanted to, but being old enough, whatever. I had no want to see 6. So I think memory wise, at least, is the first one I remember seeing in the theater. And there was so much excitement. It was awesome because we were getting a new Michael Myers. And when they announced the cast that we have Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Jamie Lee Curtis was coming back. We didn't know how, but they were going to use Dr. Loomis because he had obviously Donald Pleasance had passed away in real life. So we didn't know how that was going to happen, but we were getting a return of Michael Myers, and it was going to eliminate what at this time had become bad sequels with 5 and 6. So we were going to go 1, 2, and a new fresh plate. Awesome. Went and saw it in theaters, and it was just awesome. Josh Hartnett, just awesome. Loved it. Exciting. So rewatching that one, I was so I felt like I've rewatched it, but watching it now with a critical eye, I was like, oh my God. Like, would you feel of 90s comic books? I'm sitting there going, oh my God, 90s horror like sucked. Like sucked.
It's weird because like you can tell even that and Resurrection as well, where like yeah, it was less about the movie and the sequel and more of just like the tone of that time where it was like everything was had this like extreme edge and it wasn't just like you weren't trying to just tell a good horror movie, you were trying to like up it in a way that I don't think it needed to be upped.
No. And it's so sad because there's so many cool connections in H2O. Like, I don't know if you know this. You're a film nerd, so I'm assuming you know some of this. Jamie Lee Curtis's secretary, Laurie Strode, in the movie is Janet Leigh, her mom, which is
I did not know that.
awesome. Yeah. So when she's asking questions and all that, that's her mom, the older lady. And then there's so many references and allusions to the movie Psycho because of her mom. It's just very cool the way they go and talk about this. And when you watch it and see it, you're like, now it's obvious. So that's cool. But to watch it and realize the movie isn't good and it's not just like a little fun fact, you're like, wow, they're really like forcing this on us. Which when I first saw it, I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Mom and daughter are working together and all these references to Psycho. Now I rewatch it, I'm like, can we tell a good story, man? Like, I think it was Kevin Williamson who worked on this, who did the original Scream, Dawson's Creek. And at the time was like, yes, this dude who's like invigorating franchises. Now I'm like, dude, this is like more I Know What You Did Last Summer and Teaching Mrs. Tingle versus Scream. And there's just those tongue-in-cheek, which aren't interesting anymore. I will say, though, it's one of the best uses of Michael Myers, and they reuse it in Resurrection pathetically, when he's hanging from the pipe and he just lowers himself.
Dude,
fucking creep. Like, that is awesome. I love that. They do it in Resurrection. Like, you're not saving the movie with that.
No, it was cool. You did it right the first time. Doing it again was just kind of silly to me.
Oh, so stupid.
And like it is funny because watching it again, I'm like, oh shit! And it's like it's just introducing Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Josh Hartnett, and it's crazy just the amount of people tied to the Halloween franchise in one way or another. Like, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously, and then you know Paul Rudd with some of the later movies, and you know then
even
there's
Adam Arkin who's in this one. It's like, how did you guys get Adam Arkin to be in this movie? That's crazy to me. Like, he's a great actor.
Yeah,
they got
they got a lot of good people, and I could see at the time it being like a big project you probably want to work on. But yeah, it just
Academy Award winner Michelle Williams.
No shit.
Okay, sure.
But it's funny as much as we're talking about like H2O getting into Resurrection, it was a far more. To me, okay, the one thing that bothers me every time I rewatch Resurrection is just how unceremoniously we get rid of Laurie Strode, you know? And I'm not sure. I will say with this franchise specifically, I think when we started filming together years ago and doing stuff, this was one that you really educated me on because of all these different timelines and stuff and factoids and all this, and I think that was one of the reasons I really like Halloween more than any of the other slasher franchises. But it just when you get to Resurrection, it almost feels like we're at Jason Takes Manhattan, where it's like we're not really sure what to do. We just have to make another movie. And like, you know, it's 2002, I think that was, and it was like reality TV and the Blair Witch and all this stuff. And they just kind of forced it into this, and it does not.
Well, that's what's interesting to me. Like the concept, if you were pitching me this concept, we're going to have people spend the night in Michael Myers' home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's an interesting concept. When you add, hey, you know what? We had LL Cool J and H2O. Why don't we bring in
Busta Rhymes?
What? Are you kidding me? And then some of the other fun facts, like you're talking about Jamie Lee Curtis, I don't know where she was in her career. Like, to me, she's always been big, famous, whatever. So I don't
1,000%. Always.
I don't understand why she signed a multi-deal contract to come back for H2O. And it might have been to get producing credit It might have been to have control of the script. I don't know.
But it feels so rushed. She just like shows up,
come back, and she did not want to. So she's like, I want to be killed off. Like this is it. I want to be done, whatever. And it goes back and forth with the producers being like, she enjoyed it so much. Her one day turned to 4. And she's like, I was contractually obligated to come back. I did not want to do this. So I wanted them to kill me and be done. And so that's why she's barely in it. She did not want to do that. And it's hilarious that she's like front and center on the poster and the knife. And it's like, no, she didn't want anything. Nothing to do.
But it's just so like, I just think that like from the get-go, because it starts that way, it just kind of takes you out of it, because it's like it wasn't done in any sort of like it did seem rushed. It did seem like she showed up and was like she seemed like a Harrison Ford on the set of what was it, The Force Awakens, where he's just like, I'm here and can you stab me now? Let's get moving.
Well, what's sad, Brandon, is I watch Star Wars all the time. So I watch Return of the Jedi, and I see that more in Return of the Jedi, where Harrison Ford's like, I got an Indiana Jones movie coming out. Do I really need to be here for this?
He's like, Ewoks, really? Like,
but one of the other things that cracks me up are the fun facts on Resurrection. So we can come back to H2 if we have more, but some of the fun facts, when you are casting a Scream Queen, what do you think one of the most important parts of a Scream Queen would be?
Screaming or
the
queen?
Queen. Scream, right?
Yeah, like screaming or being a queen.
The major character, I'm going to say this wrong, Bianca Kaselich, Donovan, soccer player's former wife, whatever. She's a great actor. She's fine. She can't scream. They literally
kind of need that. Kind of need that.
For
her. Hold on. They dubbed over the screaming.
Yeah.
So she was just on set going, and they were like, okay.
It's like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know what the original audio sounds like, but I know from the fun facts that she can't scream, or her scream is worthwhile. I don't know, but it's like, wouldn't that be one of the first things you do is like, scream? Let's hear it.
We'll fix it in post. They're like, we got sound bites for that. That's crazy. That I did not know.
It is, and it's funny to see the other people in this movie. Like, did you recognize Kate? A la The Mandalorian?
No.
Yeah. I didn't know she was in this until rewatching. I'm like, the leader of the Mandalorians are in this. Great. Awesome. Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, so many people were tied to this franchise, which is still pretty cool. But, it just, this timeline, especially like not as much H2O. H2O seemed like they tried to do something and maybe it just wasn't thought out as much. But Resurrection definitely started to feel like the older Freddy movies and the older Jason movies, where it was like, we own this property and we need to legally make a movie so we can keep it. And it just, because
you notice at the beginning, it's owned by, at this point, Dimension Film.
It was Dimension at this point.
Well, I don't know if they owned it, but they were the ones releasing it, which is a byproduct of Disney, which is hilarious to me, and the Weinsteins. No comment on that. But yeah, it might have been like, we have this for another year. We need to rush out a movie, because that's what they did to Rob Zombie, specifically a sequel. We're like, we got to make a movie. We got nothing in the pipeline. Let's throw a couple $1 million to Rob and have him make a movie. And it got panned. They didn't promote it. They didn't do anything. And it's actually a pretty good movie. But I feel like you might be onto something. That might be what happened. Hey, is Roger Corman available? No. Okay.
Oh man, it's like he's really good at doing this. You just the trick is to not tell him.
Exactly. Exactly. So we'll just whatever. We'll make this happen, because it definitely feels like sorry, I couldn't remember her name. Katie Sackhoff. I couldn't remember her name.
Yeah.
I'm like,
I did not realize that at all on the.
And there was
it's
so funny, because I did look up the like fun facts on this. This is not necessarily a fun fact. It's a shitty 90s producing fact. They wanted her to do a topless scene, and she's like, "No, I'm not going to do that."
That also checks out for that time of Hollywood and movies.
So they bring in a stunt double, to do a topless scene. Obviously, make no reference to this is not Katie doing this. So she's like at the premiere, no idea, because she didn't take her shirt off. and this is what I read, so I don't know how true this is, next to her parents, and all of a sudden there's a topless scene. It's like,
those aren't my boobs. Those are not. No.
And then she got mad because they were actually smaller than her actual ones.
So now you're misrepresenting her.
It's like, dude, why do we have to disrespect? I'm not trying to get on a high horse or whatever, Me Too movement. It's like, seriously, why do we have to have that? Why do you need to do that?
I will tell, like, that is funny to think about that scene specifically, because like that made no difference other than, they put it in there to be like, it's a horror movie, someone's got to take their shirt off, and it's like, it just, she didn't want to do it. Okay, then don't worry about it.
Well, you'd already done it
move
with
on.
the redhead, so what? You needed another one? I don't. Whatever. I'm like,
yeah.
But it's just so bad. Like I tried, and I texted you. I'm like, I didn't realize this was gonna be so painful. When
I didn't either.
Doing kung fu, and I'm like, oh my god! Like I had clearly Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This movie, like I hadn't remembered all this bad shit. I'm like, oh my.
It definitely feels like this specific timeline. I would vote low, one, just because of the way you deal with Laurie Strode and getting her out of there, and it was just like that. Just felt so, and like I get it. If Jamie Lee Curtis herself was like, I'm not into this,
no,
I would have just rather you moved on and not shown her. You know what I mean? Like it would have done more and even left it open for stuff later.
And the whole stupidity of this is just, it hurts my brain to try and rationalize what they were talking about. The EMT medic somehow was checking out Michael. Michael killed him, switched clothes with him.
That is the silliest
ambulance. And then it's like, what?
Not even, yeah. Can I tell you something? Of all the things we talked about, I forgot that's how you bridged H20 to Resurrection, is that they're like, oh, the Michael you saw get killed? Not him at all. And it's like, what?
And then that's why she has to lift his mask off to make sure it's him. And that's how she dies. You're like,
because she's confirming her kill.
That is the weakest storyline. I mean, that is, again, going back to Star Wars, somehow Palpatine's back. Like, wait, what?
No, yeah, you didn't see that? He's there.
I actually would have preferred that. Somehow Michael Myers is back. It's like, okay.
Fuck it. Let's run with it.
Works for me, because I now know what your other story was. I'll take that over that any day.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Somehow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So we are both in pretty much agreement here on this.
I do want to add, and this cracks me up, and I don't know why I remember it, and it's somewhere in my collection. There was a comic book tie-in released for Resurrection.
That doesn't surprise me. I'm
bring it out, and I thought it was pretty good, and now
I will see if eBay's got anything. I
can't remember if it was before the movie I read it or after. So if I read it after, it was probably because my expectations were so low. But I remember it being actually pretty good. So I got to go back and try and find this. And obviously they probably did more with Laurie, because Jamie Lee Curtis didn't actually need to be in the comic book or associated with it.
Man, that's
but
wild.
I remember, I'm like, I remember the comic book, and I remember the cover, and I remember it being pretty good.
And yeah, I gotta tell you, there's been a lot of movies that upon years later rewatch, I'm just like,
so disappointing.
And this was definitely, because I remember it's been a long time since I watched it. I remember the Laurie Strode thing bothering me, but I don't remember it being as, maybe I just wasn't as critical back then when I would rewatch it. But this one, actually sitting down and giving my full, like, undivided attention, I was like, big woof, dude. Like,
here's how bad it is, Brandon. It made me appreciate the 2018 version more. That's saying something. That is saying something.
Well, I don't. You know what? Maybe we'll see which one we choose next year. Because I will tell you too. For those of you that don't know, Jimmy and I literally agreed and disagreed, and then switched positions on almost all of the latest sequel movies. So those will be interesting on a rewatch as well. But yeah, so I would safely say for both of us, this is definitely one of the lower ranked timelines to rewatch here.
And it sucks again because 1 and 2, which are pivotal to pretty much all the timelines, but the Rob Zombie are so good. So
dude, outstanding. Like, I cannot say that enough.
When you do follow up with what we saw, it's like, oh, you guys just farted and wasted that. Okay. Which now was why I have more of an appreciation for 2018. Yes, nerds. I know Halloween 2 isn't included that. Don't comment, please.
Which is also something I didn't know for the longest time until you told me about, was that the original idea is that this was just a guy. There's no relation. There's no connection or anything. Which honestly, like, I learned that years later, not knowing that that was the original intention when 2 came out, and that almost makes it far more terrifying.
Well, and that's what's interesting when you clear your brain and just have number 1 as a standalone and realize that they're not related. It changes so much because the franchise up to 2018 had been so heavily relying on this relationship with, obviously not 3, but with 4 being his niece, 5 being his niece, 6 being like this birth of this new relation. Then going back to H20 with his sister again, and then 8 Resurrection.
Like, he's always been driven by family. Family has been the thing.
It was like, that's crazy when you go back and you realize there was nothing like that. It was just literally she put the letter in the house because
that set him off. And that set him off. You came to my house. You touched my stuff.
You invaded.
Yeah, which is because I thought about that on this rewatch. I was like, wow, that was it. Can you drop this off at the old Myers place? And she does, and he's just like, well, now I have to murder you.
Yeah,
crazy.
It really is. And that's the other thing. I want to reach out to the nerds. Please do comment. Brandon was asking which timeline, and then he's like, well, what other franchises could we do this to? And it really got me thinking. I'm like, holy crap. Halloween is really unique in that there are 4 or 5 timelines that exist with this character being the focus of most of them, and rebooting, resetting, reusing, what have you. The only other one I could think of off the top of my head was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I really couldn't think of any others that, like Friday the 13th, it's always the same timeline until the reboot, but there's only one. Nightmare on Elm Street, again, same, except for the reboot.
Yeah.
I guess Predator a little bit when you get into wacky stuff, but yeah, so please comment below on what other franchises we can tackle as far as timelines.
I think we can do it. We'll have to map it out. But I think until next October, we can maybe try Terminator. Because that would be that's one of the other franchises I can think about with multiple timelines. But I would be down to do another Halloween timeline next October and a Texas Chainsaw Massacre one. Because I will say, as far as slasher movies go, I love the first one. I have cursory knowledge and rewatches of any Texas Chainsaw sequels. So that could be fun as well.
In my opinion, and this is probably why I grew up loving Halloween the most, I felt like at the time, their sequels were the best. I can't say that now, but growing up, that's what I felt. When Jason got to 7, 8, 9, it was like, are you kidding me? And Freddy, similarly. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in my opinion, when they got to 2, it was like, what the hell? You already?
I remember when I watched it, I was like, this is not the same vibe as that first movie at all.
No, it's not. And to me, all their sequels suck until they get to like their reboot and then their prequel. But we'll talk about that later.
We'll get there. Yeah. Well, that's our opinions of the H20 timeline. I'd say it's about 50% because 2 of them rule, 2 of them are a little rough.
Yeah. And it's sadly, it's a hard watch. Please watch it if you've never seen them, but it's not one of those ones that you remember fondly or anything like that. It's like, this is hard.
Yeah, it takes some patience. Well, let us know what you guys think. And, like Jamie said, if there's anything out there that we didn't bring up as far as either factoids or, different franchise timelines, let us know in the comments. But thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.